We're jumping in with some Baldur's Gate character review, starting with the fighter. And when I say starting, also finishing with the fighter. The fighter itself is a very, very straightforward character class to play. And we're looking at the primary class. We'll work our way through the subclasses in future vlogs. It's often recommended, if you're new to the game, to start playing a fighter. To not only learn the mechanics, but to give you the easiest experience, give you an experience that you can adapt to and not make it halfway through the saga or halfway through BG1 and suddenly kind of hit one of those walls. And I am going to be very, very careful to not reveal any spoilers and to not talk about any specific plot points, because the game is a role-playing game. I don't want to take that away from you. And likewise, we're going to explore some magic items, but I'm going to be speaking about it indirectly because I don't want to give away anything. I want you to discover it for yourself. Baldur's Gate is not a game that you play through just once or twice, but a couple of times to not only see different angles of the main storyline, but also complete side quests again, or side quests that you've missed or rediscovered, and of course getting the experience from an entirely different character class. So from that perspective, the fighter is also a character class that, for the full immersion on the magic item side, you're going to want to explore again and again. So there's this duality of one of the first character classes you play, and then after you've sampled and played some of the other character classes, returning back to the fighter. So let's just jump in. What makes the fighter powerful? What makes the fighter proficient? Essentially hit points, attack ability, and armor class till about halfway through the game. Being a fighter, obviously strength and constitution is important. You're going to get the most base hit points, a good starting group of hit points. What this means is as you level up, with your constitution bonus and other certain select magic items, you're going to have a large pool of hit points. This is very forgiving. If you walk through traps, if you have a couple of bad rounds of combat, going against some of the more powerful bosses and monsters in the Dungeons & Dragons Compendium, you can take some damage. It's forgiving from that perspective. Compare that all the way on the other spectrum, playing a magic user, you can kind of get hit, one shot, get killed, step across a trap, die. It's very, very forgiving to play a fighter. Now, whether you choose to go toe-to-toe and smash things out, or you decide to be a little bit more deceptive or ranged, that's a different story, but you've got the good amount of hit points. Let's look at armor class. Now, the fighter, along with other martial classes, frontline fighting martial classes, has the ability to generate a very, very low armor class. When you take that armor class, again, with some magic items as you move through the game, damage reduction, blur, and other ways to miss in the first place, what that means is there's a good chance that the monster, the encounter, is not going to hit you, or certainly it's not going to be hitting every single time. This, combined with your pool of hit points, combined with the potential for massive damage output, makes the fighter consistent, a consistent grind of damage turn after turn after turn after turn. Now, armor class is important, but at a certain point in the game, it starts to become, I won't say irrelevant, because it's a D20 based system. The computer, the tablet, the phone can roll a 1 or 2, and there's to hit bonuses. It is possible for some of the more powerful monsters to miss, although that's less likely. But at some point, as the monsters and encounters become more powerful, they're going to hit you more often than not. So I don't want to say ignore armor class, but it's very, very helpful in the beginning, especially BG1, where you're learning the mechanics, you're learning how fights work, you're doing party management, or if you're making a solo game to get enough gold to purchase certain magic items. It's good, and the fighter utilizes armor class, but at a certain point, it's going to become less important. That's not to say we're never going to neglect it, because it is a cornerstone of the character. Now let's look at damage output. The fighter has the ability to utilize every single weapon in the game. There are a couple of magic items that are class restricted that the fighter can't use, but you're going to have your choice. Two-handed swords, one-handed swords, daggers, ranged weapons, axes, mauls, warhammers, pole arms, everything to push out. The game uses a subset of the second edition Dungeons & Dragons, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons rules, which gives you weapon specializations. You get to put those points in weapon specializations, and you get bonuses, and you decrease potential penalties, depending on the type of weapon, as you use it. These bonuses, you can become what they call Grandmaster and put enough ranks in these weapons when combined with the number of attacks that you get per turn, when combined with other magical bonuses and level bonuses, with your hit point pool, means on a graph, it's just consistent damage. That's the strength of the fighter compared to some of the subclasses like the Berserker and the Barbarian. They have a damage output that kind of spikes. So you're moving along, you spike, you get a tremendous damage output, but then there's a pullback and a weakness. So the difference with those classes, and again, we're going to cover them, is the timing of the spike. The fighter is very consistent. Now, this is where the role-playing comes in, because the fighter is very straightforward. But of course, it's not just put it on auto control and go. Baldur's Gate is very much, yes, it's a role-playing game, but it's also a tactical fighting game. On the tabletop, if you've ever played a miniature skirmish game, that's what this very much is. So from the perspective of the fighter, yes, you're not slinging spells, putting aside multi-class, dual class for a second. You're not using spells. You're not using magic. You don't have certain clicky powers like the other character classes do, but it's not just run forward. Positioning, figuring out target priority, speed becomes very, very important. Again, no spoilers, but at a certain point when you acquire ways to move faster, that's going on your character. That's going on the fighter. A fighter that is fast and can make it across the screen in one turn and just damage output consistent, that's awesome. That's got some bite. Now, here's where the playthrough comes in on the opposite side. The fighter having the ability to master multiple weapon systems and use multiple weapon systems, you're going to discover a lot of really cool magic items in the game. And as you move into Dragon Spear, as you move into BG2, as you move into the Throne, these items become artifacts. They become really, really, really awesome. And it's like you want to use them all. You want to be able to use them all. You can farm out a few to the party members if you have the appropriate class. But the fighter's cool because you're going to have so many proficiency points. You can stack Grandmastery or you can stack Mastery level in multiple weapons and have a lot of fun playing them, have a lot of fun collecting them, have a lot of fun exploring them. There are also different types of magic items at the higher levels that not only deal damage, but have certain attributes, certain abilities when they hit. You can literally have like 5 or 6 of these weapons on your belt, on your back, swap in and out based on the encounter that you are fighting to maximize the major weaknesses of the monsters you're going to face. So you can approach it from that meta angle. And from that perspective, the fighter becomes very, very potent, very, very powerful, more so than many of the other character classes in the game. So from that role-playing perspective, after you've been through BG a few times, you get to play with different weapons. You get to explore different weapons. You get to decide, hey, if I want to do a two-handed sword plus a flail plus a heavy crossbow, you can do that. You can be there with the heavy crossbow, toss it on your back, pull out the flail, fight with that. There are a lot of possibilities to explore. Not to mention other magic items, not to mention the fighter can wear all sorts of armor. At its core, Baldur's Gate is a fighting game. It's a Dungeons & Dragons encounter fighting game. And the magic items that support that, in D&D and AD&D, like magic items are everywhere. They're just handed out like baby cakes, candy everywhere. The fighter can utilize the majority of those items because, again, it's a fighting game. So you can utilize those suits of armor. You can utilize those belts and gloves. You can utilize helmets. You can utilize weapons. You're always going to have that proficiency and the ability to swap things up in the game and for additional runs.